There is a specific kind of person who slips into the garage long after everyone else has gone to bed, lifts the edge of a faded canvas cover and runs a hand along the dusty hood of a car that hasn't seen a public road in years. The vehicle is no longer practical. Its paint has oxidized into a soft, uneven patina. The upholstery carries the faint, unmistakable scent of old vinyl and spilled coffee from a decade ago. By every logical standard, fuel efficiency, safety ratings, resale value, it should have been sold or scrapped long ago. And yet this person keeps it. They polish the chrome when no one is watching. They turn the key every few months just to hear the engine catch and settle into its familiar idle. When friends joke about the money pit or family members gently suggest it's time to move on, something inside them tightens. It's a quiet refusal that feels almost sacred. You may know this person. Perhaps you have watched them from the passenger seat of their newer car, wondering why they still pay for insurance on something they rarely drive. Or perhaps if you are honest with yourself in the quiet of this moment, you recognize the feeling. That subtle ache when you imagine letting something irreplaceable slip away. These are not collectors chasing rarity or investors hedging against inflation. They are ordinary people, engineers and teachers, fathers and sons, mothers who once cruised empty highways with the windows down and the radio loud, who formed an attachment to one particular machine, their first car, the one that carried them across the threshold between childhood and whatever came next. And the longer you watch them, and the clearer it becomes that this attachment refuses to fade. But this isn't really about cars. It never was. It is about the quiet, stubborn way human beings try to hold on to the version of themselves that first tasted freedom. The first car is rarely just transportation. For most of us, it arrives at the exact moment when the world begins to feel negotiable. You are 17 or 18, newly licensed, and suddenly a set of keys grants you something no parent or teacher can give back. The ability to leave, to choose your own direction, even if that direction is only 20 miles of back roads at midnight. The engine becomes the soundtrack to your first real decisions. The cracked vinyl seat becomes the only private space you have ever truly owned. And in that narrow window of time, and the car stops being an object and starts becoming a witness. It is there for the first solo drive after an argument at home. It is there when you pick up your best friend and the two of you talk about futures that feel impossibly large. It is there when you park under a familiar tree with someone you are falling in love with, windows fogged, hearts racing louder than the cooling fan. These are not casual memories. They are the raw material from which we assemble our adult identities. Psychologists have a name for what happens next. They call it the extended self, a concept first explored in depth by consumer researcher Russell Belk. The idea is deceptively simple. Certain possessions do not merely belong to us, they become part of who we are. When we pour our time, our effort, our first tastes of independence into an object, and the boundary between me and mine begins to dissolve. The car is no longer something you own. It is something you were. Sell it, and you are not merely losing 4 wheels and a chassis. You are risking a small fracture in the story you tell yourself about how you became the person standing in the garage tonight. This is why the attachment feels so irrational to outsiders and yet so necessary to the owner. The behavior looks like stubbornness, paying for storage, turning down generous offers, spending weekends chasing elusive parts on the internet. But look closer and what you see is a person quietly negotiating with time itself. The world moves fast, jobs change, relationships evolve, cities grow unrecognizable, hair thins, knees ache, and the version of you who once believed everything was possible begins to feel like a stranger you used to know. The first car, however imperfect, refuses to change. It still smells the same. It still rumbles the same. Turn the key and you are, for a moment, back on that empty highway at 17. when the future had not yet made its compromises. In preserving the car, the owner is preserving proof that that younger self was real. And here we arrive at an uncomfortable truth about human nature. Most of us are far more sentimental than we admit. We live in a culture that celebrates the new, the upgraded, the disposable. Yet privately we hoard symbols of what we cannot replace. We keep the worn-out concert t-shirt. We save the ticket stub from a first date. We cannot explain why, but letting these things go feels like betrayal. And for the person who cannot let go of their first car, that feeling is simply more visible, more mechanical, more expensive. It reveals a deeper reluctance to accept that life is a series of small, permanent departures. Each mile we drive forward leaves another mile behind. The car becomes a stationary anchor in a moving river. Often the attachment is woven even tighter by the threads of upbringing. For some, the first car was the first real escape from a difficult home. The engine noise drowned out arguments behind closed doors. The open road offered the only silence they had ever known. For others, it was the opposite. The car represented permission, a parent who finally trusted them with something valuable. A grandfather who taught them how to change the oil on Saturday mornings by passing down not just mechanical knowledge, but a quiet language of care. These early experiences turn the car into something more than metal and rubber. It becomes a vessel for love, for rebellion, for the complicated process of growing up while still needing to belong. When you polish that hood late at night, you are not merely maintaining a vehicle. You are touching the last surviving witness to the person your parents raised, the person your friends once knew, the person you were before life asked you to become someone more practical. There is dignity in this refusal to let go. In an age that urges us to optimize everything, to upgrade, to declutter, to move on without looking back, the car guy who keeps his first car is quietly asserting that some things should not be measured only by utility. He is saying that memory has value and that continuity matters. That the self is not a disposable product, but a story that deserves at least one physical chapter preserved in its original form. And yet even he knows, somewhere beneath the surface, that the car will not last forever. Rust never sleeps. Parts become impossible to find. One day the engine will refuse to turn over and the question will arrive unavoidable. What part of you are you really trying to keep alive? This is the deeper current running beneath the surface of every late-night garage ritual. It is not obsession. It is reverence. Reverence for the moment when the world first opened up and you stepped into it, uncertain but free. Reverence for the person who learned how to navigate that freedom, sometimes gracefully, sometimes crashing into guardrails and learning the hard way. Reverence for the simple truth that we are all, in the end, trying to stay connected to the parts of ourselves that still believe in open roads and possibilities that have not yet been paved over. So the next time you see someone like this, perhaps it is the quiet neighbor who waves from under the hood of his old Civic, or the colleague who still talks about his first Mustang with a softness that seems out of place in a conference room. Do not dismiss it as mere nostalgia. Look again. You are watching a human being perform a small, private act of defiance against forgetting, against the idea that everything must be replaced, against the quiet fear that if we let go of the first thing that ever carried us forward, we might lose the map that shows us how we arrived here at all. And now, and if you will allow the question to settle in the stillness where this narration ends, consider your own life. What is the object, the place, the memory, the version of yourself that you have quietly refused to let go? What faded thing still sits covered in your garage, literal or metaphorical, waiting for you to lift the tarp and remember who you were the day you first turned the key? Because in the end, The psychology of the car guy is simply the psychology of being human, trying with everything we have to carry a little piece of our beginning with us all the way to the end.